everyone for being at today's budget work session. I am going to ask, are you going to lead us today?
I will tee it up, and then I will hand it over to the
Okay.
Office of Budget and Management Services. So welcome, Mayor and Council, and welcome to Budget Day. There's a lot of things that we will discuss today that sort of kind of is the culmination of about 10 months of staff time and putting together a budget document that addresses not only organizational goals and objectives, but council strategic initiatives as well as concerns and needs that were addressed from our community. And as a result of that, we presented the budget on May 16th. We held our public hearing 2 weeks ago, and we are at today's point of hopefully you will feel appropriate, that it is appropriate to adopt the proposed FY24 budget, in that you will see we have included each of your budget notes, and your budget notes are your requests for additional items that were not necessarily laid out by staff through the budget development process. In addition to that, there is one exception to the budget notes. Councilmember Melton lifted up enhanced educational incentives across the organization and looking at bringing some parity in education incentives for our public safety employees. And so as staff does that work over the summer, we will bring back a proposal and a funding strategy for that for FY24. It'll be a partial year, and then we plan to operationalize that in FY25. I think that does two things. That brings all of our public safety employees on the same plane, so to say, in the way that education incentives are awarded, as well as updating some policies for the rest of the organization in the way of educational benefits as part of our employee assistance program. So totally excited to do that work, and we will bring back a funding proposal in the fall that we will fund hopefully through capital reserves if we stay on target. Lastly, I think one of the things that we wanted to highlight is the level of commitment that we have included in this budget for affordable housing and our attention to homelessness, or trying to make sure that there are housing provision for those that are unhoused in our community. That is our number one council priority. It is our number one organizational priority, and I think it is our number one community priority at this point. And so I'm happy to announce that not just in the dollar amounts that you see in that line item, this budget lifts up $32.9 million to address that. That speaks to what is appropriated in Housing and Neighborhoods budget, what we have in some of our HUD entitlement dollars that we get through as pass-through money from the federal government. That is also our penny tax for housing, which leverages us right now about $8 million, and we right-sized it in this proposed budget. And lastly, it includes our partnerships with our nonprofit builders and developers, because basically we can't do this work. We don't build housing. We don't have construction employees that get out there and do that work, and I think a lot of people think we do, but what we do is we leverage each of our public dollars to be able to incentivize projects, to be able to close the gap in some of the LIHTC, low income tax credit projects, to be able to make sure that those projects are fully funded so that a developer is right on the cusp of making a development happen. We come in, put in those additional dollars to incentivize that. And so really, really happy about that. So just wanted to clarify to know that in this proposed budget, there's $32.9 million to address affordable housing and homelessness. And with that, I will turn it over to Sadia Sitar, who is our budget director, and she will kind of walk you through the backup materials and budget documents that were presented to you last Friday.
All right. Well, good afternoon, Mayor and City Council members and City Manager. The last time we met, as the City Manager said, June 5th was our very first budget work session. This is our second budget work session for the fiscal year 24 proposed budget. And today, our first agenda item speaks to some technical corrections and council additions that have occurred after the fiscal year 24 budget was proposed on May 16th. So I'm going to walk you all through some technical corrections as part of this budget process, and then speak to some of the additions in the proposed budget, specifically since our meeting here on June 5th. So starting off with some technical corrections, As you are aware, we produce a magnificent beast of a budget book, so certain things get left out. So as part of this process, unfortunately, we left out about $60,000 for the communications department, which is for funding for the RTN network that we have here. And this is just a federal allocation that is received annually. So we have made it a point in our correction to add that funding back. Something else that was added to the fiscal year 24 proposed budget is related to Raleigh Water. So this is technically that, we proposed a budget on May 16th, and Raleigh Water's cadence for bond sale issuances didn't occur till just this month. So we are correcting for that in our budget as well. And then some other things that we are adding to the budget, and that's based on our conversation on June 5th. That is the e-bike incentive program. So we all met on June 5th, and council advised that we move forward with approving an e-bike incentive pilot program for the following year in the amount of $150,000, as well as some operational increases. So we're moving forward with that in our budget process. And then super excited to note that we are also increasing crossing guard pay from $11 an hour to starting pay of $15.66 an hour. So those are some of the additions. Along with, on June 5th, you also heard from Matt Currier from Transportation, who talked about parking rates, specifically around Glenwood South. So adding those additions to parking fees in the Glenwood South Parking Overlay District. And then as we're talking about fees, I do want to quickly mention that when we put on a budget book, we also attach a fee schedule to that. And as you can see, there are hundreds and hundreds of fees included in that. So sometimes there is an error. And unfortunately, we did find an error, which had to do with a a permit fee for stormwater. So this permit fee is currently proposed to be $106 per permit, but unfortunately, we cannot raise it to $106 by state, legislation. It can only be $100 per permit. So happy to report that it is actually a decrease in the fee and not an increase. So we will be making that change as we move from proposed to adopted this year. So this is as far as technical corrections and council phase additions are concerned. Also in your packet, as the city manager mentioned, you'll see a plethora of ordinances that have to do with adopting the operating budget, as well as the city's CIP. We also have a resolution for the municipal service districts here in the city of Raleigh, as well as for the Raleigh Convention Center. And then we also have a resolution to adopt the tax rate, should City Council decide to adopt the tax rate today. And then, of course, an ordinance to revise parking violations related to Glenwood South and others. So this runs through everything that we have for you all today.
Councilmember Harrison.
Just two items. I just want to thank everyone for putting this budget together. I know it's a beast of work. And I wanted to just note some of our efforts on affordable housing because, again, as you mentioned, Marshall, they are so critical to our mission. The affordable rental house development, home buyer assistance, homeowner rehabilitation, those programs are really meaningful for our community. And so when I'm looking at the budget, I did note that we are projected to preserve or create 450 affordable rental units in the next fiscal year, whereas we were estimated to get to 614 this year. So it is a slight decrease, 614 to 450 projected. I do want to make sure that we continue trending up in this space. I know we are in a very difficult economic climate for keeping those trends going higher, but I know our annual goal is 570 affordable housing units. So I just want us to be thoughtful about, for fiscal year 2025, how do we keep on track with additional resources? So as noted, we have the 1 cent property tax. That's almost $8 million per year for affordable housing creation. I would like to evaluate options with a budget note to double this amount for fiscal year 2025. So I recognize that's too late for this year's budget, but I know we also need to have sufficient projects in the pipeline so that any additional monies can be utilized. So I want us to start doing that work now.
Absolutely.
And make sure that we can prioritize that growth in the coming years. So again, thank you for all the work in this space. I just want to keep it going. And then on the second issue, I just wanted to really lift up and highlight work of the Downtown Raleigh Alliance, and in particular their ambassador program. So that is covered in this budget. Their team includes a dozen individuals who patrol the 110 blocks of downtown on foot, bicycle, and Segway. They work 7 days a week at all hours of the night. They provide safety escorts late at night, helping to keep our restaurant and bar workers safe, as well as those who visit downtown and area residents. If anyone was following the news this weekend, we did have, unfortunately, shootings on Glenwood, and the extra eyes and the ears of these ambassadors in crowded areas and at special events, has become clear to me just how vital they are. They share information, and for anyone who needs assistance from an ambassador, I just have to put their hotline out there, 919-368-7962. As I've told a few folks, I'm looking for a number that's easier to remember, maybe soon. But these are great folks. And also on Friday last week, they put out Project Reach Out, which is a day of care. It happens twice a year. They have two ambassadors who are actually social workers. So they are connecting with community organizations and community members who need their support. They're bringing on partners like the Wake Tech School of Barbering, which provides haircuts, legal aid, which shares legal advice, and so many groups that offer transitional living programs and healthcare. So I just want to lift up their work, and so thankful that we have partners like this that are covered in our budget.
I think that's an excellent summary, but also points out the work that is often done under the radar. And the social workers in particular have done an exceptional job, as have the ambassadors, and they work hard. And thank you for recognizing that.
And I think to that point, not just in regards to DRA, but a lot of the work, and it's kind of lifted in what my initial comments were, we can't do this work by ourselves. Mm-hmm. Much of what we do happens because of partnerships with the community, whether it's a nonprofit group. We do have some for-profit bodies that we work with as well, but much of what we do is part of a community partnership to make this community great.
Councilmember Jones?
Thank you. Thank you guys so much for your work. I do want to just highlight just my experience so far on this. I am brand new to council, and so this whole process is the first time that I've been a part of it. It was a little bit confusing for me just from the start, from the get-go. I don't know that I completely, fully understood exactly when to ask questions and when to make sure that things got in on time. I didn't have those dates. So I am thankful for guidance. I know Lou helped me get that budget note in, so I really appreciate that help. I know that with that, the big budget, I had a bunch of questions and was able to meet with you guys. So really, I do appreciate that. But unfortunately, I wasn't given the responses to those questions that I have until this morning. So I haven't had the time to really digest everything yet, to really understand. I'm sure everything is great, but I wish that I had gotten it a little bit earlier just because I didn't know that today was the day. So I'm like, oh, okay, I'll ask next week, I'll make sure. So there has been a little bit of frustration on my end, just trying to get all of those and realizing it feels a little, for me, feels kind of rushed. I know it's probably not, but being a first-time counselor and being in this position for the first time, I didn't realize the process and when the dates were. So I really hope for next year, I'm really excited about the participatory budgeting that we're going to do and that we're going to start in the fall so that next year it'll be a little clearer. I know better now what questions to ask, but I did want to uplift that just because I'm just a little bit floundering right now. So I just wanted to make sure that was known. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Councilmember Melton?
The only comment I was going to make is that I look forward to watching this process evolve under your leadership moving forward, and I am very excited about, to echo Councilmember Jones's comments, implementing some participatory budgeting in future cycles. I think that'll be really important. I also appreciate the city manager taking time to honor and uphold the budget note request about the education incentives and education pay. I'm excited for that to come back to us to be implemented for this year in the fall and then programmed in fiscal year 2025. And then the last thing I wanted to just highlight is this budget, in case there's any confusion, it does keep transit operating fare-free through the fiscal year. So that will be through June 30th of 2024. I know we will need to be making some decisions soon on strategies moving forward, but that is in this budget. And I think that was important to highlight as well. So thank you.
Councilmember Black.
Hi. So I want to mirror some of the things that Councilor Jones said. I think a lot of us new councilors were like, whoa. And my favorite question during this time has been, so how's council going? And it's like, well, we're in budget season now. So that's a little bit different than everything else we've been doing. So mirroring what other people are saying, I was one of the people that asked about participatory budgeting. So I'm really excited that that's going to be rolling out earlier and giving the community more chances to engage on the budget rather than like right at the end of the fiscal year. So I guess this is to say, like, I read the budget. I think, there's some good stuff in there. And we're going to be ready for you next year with some more stuff. Like, you're not going to be so new next time.
Bring it.
Sorry. Councilmember Patton, then we'll come back to Councilmember Jones.
Got the hoodie, yeah. Yeah, thanks, Park staff, for this great hoodie. That's not my comment, but it is a nice hoodie. Yes, thank you for all of your work on this, and I want you and all the staff departments who worked on this to know that we took it seriously. I don't know if the Post-it notes can be seen from afar, but we took this really seriously. To echo Councilmember Jones, I'd love for the manager's office to, maybe we can have some discussions after this on opportunities for process improvements to make sure that everyone feels like they're having the conversations they wish they were able to have. So I welcome that opportunity, but I also want to, some things that I want to lift up that are super cool in this budget. Making sure the city of Raleigh is a great employer has always been really important to me, and so I'm thrilled that we're lifting the living wage calculation, and I'm also thrilled to see the way that we're moving away from a match and to a direct contribution to employees' retirement funds. I think that's a really big win for city employees. So I'm really pleased about that. Bringing Wi-Fi to the fire stations is cool. There's a lot of great work for the citizens of Raleigh in here, but those were some of the ones that I wanted to highlight. So thank you.
Councilmember Jones.
I think this is more a question for the table. I'm wondering how in the future how do we discuss public comment or public hearing? So we had the public hearing last week, and because I didn't realize we were doing it this quickly, I thought we would have some conversation time, but how do we implement or even acknowledge the comments that were received and address it to what we're doing in the vote that we're taking? How does that work?
One of two ways. You can have conversations with your peers, one-on-one. The other thing is you bring them up here. That's what this meeting is for. Councilmember, Mayor Pro Tem.
So I just want to say, first of all, thank you to staff, because you all started back in October and working on a budget. And I'm pretty sure the list that you gave the city manager's office in January probably isn't exactly everything you asked for. But at the same time, you understand the challenges and the things that we have as a city. And you understand the demands that we have on us. And as we're doing that and as we're growing and people are moving here, we also understand the demands of housing and what we have to do to find ways to help people stay in their home and also help people find a home and just get started for the first time. We have to look at our low-income housing. We have to work with our partners with the Raleigh Housing Authority, but also we have to look at those that make just enough that they don't qualify for vouchers. Where do they stay? Where do they live? And that's the balance and the rub that I think the 8 of us have to figure out, as well as we look at our low-income housing needs and our homeless needs. Because some people are just that one check away from, like, people come here and tell us every day, and it goes back to the comments you said, where do we uplift? I think a lot of the comments that we heard on last week are comments we've heard for a number of months. And I think that plays a big part in the work that Councilor Fort is leading, as far as working with and partnering with the county. And that's something that we need to continue. I agree with Councilor Harrison as far as looking at ways to increase the number of units that we get out when we're looking at our tax credit. The bulk of that was usually done via our tax credits, our 4% and our 9%. So how can we partner? This year we only had 2 applicants. You know, I remember when I first got on council, we had like 4 and 5. And sometimes we had to pick and choose because we didn't have enough money. And that led to the work that myself and Mayor Baldwin did in 2016 and asking for the 1 penny, you know, to go towards housing, to put more money in. So we just have to look at other ways to be creative, look at the federal government, finding ways. Maybe there's not money in there directly for housing, but maybe it's a way to help offset some of our stormwater or offset some of the transportation that, you know, things that we can put in that can help cover other costs. Just looking forward to us being holistically creative as we're going forward. And again, I mean, I was ready. I think I saw Councilor Forthand like she was about to say something because I was ready to make a motion to go ahead and approve this budget, but I'll stop there.
Do you want to get in the way of a motion, Councilmember Ford?
Very, very briefly.
You can make it, I'll second it.
No, the only thing I was going to say is the one thing that I think we haven't raised too is that I'm hopeful that the budget will help you get fully staffed. I had a conversation with some other elected officials last week, and I think we're like every municipality. You know, what I told them is that I think every department in the city of Raleigh has at least 1 vacancy. So I don't think there's any department across the city that's fully staffed. And as we're coming back into the workplace and folks are coming back into our buildings, they want to see live bodies. They want to interact with people. And so hopefully this budget will help every department across the city get fully staffed so that we can really serve our constituents in the best way that we possibly can. So now make your motion.
I move for approval of the 23-24 fiscal year budget with
Second.
all technical corrections made.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that was unanimous. Clerk, thank you.
Thank you. Now the real work begins, implementation and making sure we follow through on the commitments that we brought forward to you guys.
I just want to acknowledge the many, many months of work that have gone into this. I think it's amazing that you were able to incorporate all of the notes, budget notes, and not contribute to a tax increase. When I look at what we've accomplished with this budget, you know, affordable housing, fare-free transit, support for public safety and all our employees, parks and green space, thank you voters for 73% of you voting to approve this. We all know that that is good for our mental health and physical health. And I'll tell you what, I have not heard so much before about this e-bike incentive. I am getting like text messages. There is so much excitement about this. So thank you, Councilmember Melton and Harrison, for advocating for that. You know, all of these things really improve our quality of life, and I just want to say thank you to everyone for your hard work.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we're adjourned.